opportunities beyond just often thought of in the tourism thing. It's transient. You know, you're in, you're out. It's a part-time. It's a gig. You get your tips and you move on. But there's real opportunities to make careers here and grow and share your tools. We look at ourselves almost as our own municipality. We have first aid, we have transportation, we have all these pieces. It's not just the cooking and the cleaning of a traditional hotel that takes place within tourism to make it happen successfully. The revenue within our organization was $106 million last year, expecting to be about $110 million within Pike County. Obviously, that's a large number, and the impact that has. We reinvest, as Dad mentioned, one of the keys to success. So beyond our operational expenses, we spent $5.5 million in capital expenditures last year. This year is expected to be close to $7 million in capital expenditures. We try to spend that money as much as possible with local contractors and the local environment to help the area thrive as best that we can and have those opportunities. And obviously from a tax revenue standpoint, a lot of tax revenue is generated from all the businesses that we have, as well as the communities that were developed through the years. A community like Woodloch Springs, where there's 400 taxpayers, but 6 students coming out of that is a great benefit to the Wallenpaupack Area School District to do those things. So all those pieces tie into the local economic impact that we have. A couple foundational pieces which we try to keep in mind from the start through today is working with the local employees as well as from a subcontractor, whether it be the farms that we source for food, particularly at the lodge where we're able to more intimate setting, able to using smaller farms to get farm-to-table experiences, subcontractors that we have, working through PA First programs through some of the larger companies like a Cisco that are able to support those things. That's integral. Not only do we want to work with these people, we go to school with their children. It is a close-knit community, and those are real relationships which we want to build and nurture and see mutual success for all those involved with it. Community involvement has been a part, as Dad said, from the inception of my grandfather's involvement in the community. My father's been very involved in it. All of us in the third generation are also very involved on the boards of hospitals, ambulances, school boards, PMVBs. When you live in our style of community, if you care about the community, you need to engage. Somebody else is not going to do that. And I think that is something that's not only brought on by our family, but our staff do that. We have a tremendous amount of volunteer firefighters, PTA organizations, and all those pieces. And that's a culture that begins with serving others. And I think that's the hospitality and tourism. It's natural that the goal of tourism is for you to serve others. And that doesn't just mean when they're paying you transactionally, it also relates to your community and how you can give back to that. Obviously, the schools and charities also tie into those components. Another foundational piece is maintaining the natural surrounding. As mentioned earlier, you're 90 minutes away from Manhattan, but you could feel a world away. You're 2.5 hours from Philadelphia, 4 hours from Boston, but literally you feel like you're an oasis. That is something that makes our location truly exceptional and one that we take very, very seriously in maintaining that. Every development that has happened, and we've certainly developed land, the goal has been to enhance and improve and tie into the already natural surroundings. So that is a key part of all the decision-making that we do. Lake Wallenpaupack is a huge part of our area. Though a lot of our guests stay on campus, it is still the most recognized name kind of in that Wayne Pike area. And so we want to make sure that is maintained to appropriate level. Our lake at the resort, we test that annually, every single year for algae blooms and all to make sure the health and maintaining. That is a natural spring-fed lake. We want to make sure that though we recreate on it, we are maintaining it for long-term success and for the enjoyment of generations beyond. On campus, we've done things like composting. We're working with the local Human Resource Center, which is works with special needs children in terms of recycling of cardboard and doing those kind of programs. And there's opportunities there. I think that's one of the opportunities that we need to learn more about, of what the state legislature can guide us through in terms of maintaining and doing things intelligently and environmentally sensitively while we run a large business at the same time without becoming cumbersome. A couple of the challenges, because in doing this for 66 years, there are a few challenges that arise along the way. The first one is going to be, I don't think unique at all for any hospitality, and that is the staffing issues that are faced throughout. It's an industry issue. The post-COVID world made it worse, especially, I think, in the hospitality industry and the societal changes. The idea of working nights and weekends and holidays, people value their time more than they value sometimes employment or the dollars that are provided with it. Our busiest times are when everybody else is off. So having to have somebody who embraces that mentality is key. We also obviously don't have a large population, and we have seasonality. Again, going back to having solved that problem, we have gone out and we've worked with H-2B programs. We have for almost 20 years, which brings in international workers for up to 10 months at a time. We work with J-1 programs, which is international students, mostly from Eastern Europe during the summer session, and then South America in the winter session to help offset. Unfortunately, that still does not give us all the needs we have. We've had to go into working with temp agencies, which is not ideal. We want to have people who live in our community and giving back to our community as much as possible. So we continue to work with it, but the reality is there are probably 5 months out of the year where we are not allowed to operate at our full capacity because we do not have the staff to do so. And we make the decision to not sacrifice the experience, so we will cap our counts in order to make sure we do that. So some of that is on us, certainly in terms of that recruitment phase, but it is a reality facing the industry. Closely tied to that is the affordable housing component, which is happening throughout, and there's a lot of communication that's happening about affordable housing. I think there's a unique dynamic. The PMVB has been very active with trying to help with those things. The PRLA, there's a number of organizations who are trying to address that. Our sticking point here is we are not Monroe County. We don't have central water, you don't have central sewer, and you don't have the infrastructure in place to create density. And that's a very significant challenge for us as we try to provide affordable housing. We've had to resort to going around and buying 15 to 20, 50-year-old, 60-year-old homes and take care of them and maintaining them to a point that we do the best we can to allow people to live there. So that ties into those infrastructure questions. I do want to echo appreciation for the roads. This is the best for you guys driving in. The roads were recently paved. It's the best they've looked in my lifetime. So thank you. Yeah, that's it. There you go. But the water and sewer is something that every time we've had through the county, they brought introduced people to try to do some of the development for affordable housing. It's just a sticking point. We're blessed with high quality waterways all around us. So there's sensitivity to it, but trying to find a way through that is really critical. Obviously, maintaining our infrastructure that we have, 66 years we built. As you toured the property, you can almost see the evolution of growth as you go around. That takes a tremendous amount of capital to do on an annual basis. This is a asset-driven business, and we need to maintain those levels to get that recognition, to continue to employ over 1,200 people. We need to make sure we're meeting expectations. That requires a lot of capital on an annual basis for us. The For Pete's Sake project, which I think my brother Bob had mentioned a bit, he probably mentioned he is a cancer survivor. He on his own developed his own charitable organization, has raised over $2 million giving back to cancer research just from a grassroots standpoint, which is fantastic. Through that process, connected with Marcy from For Pete's Sake, who is the CEO of For Pete's Sake. And this is a very exciting project for us on multiple fronts. One is a great developmental project, up to $25 million project on land that we currently own that would be purchased over to them. And it would become, again, the first cancer respite center in the country happening here in the Commonwealth. And there's not a single person that is not impacted by cancer anywhere you go. And certainly more depth that can happen in that. But there's job creation. And overall, I believe the purpose fits into the tourism and hospitality mentality, but also our purpose as an organization as we've existed. Shifting gears pretty dramatically, the LCB is one that is always a situation that is challenging for us. We do sell a lot of alcohol in our organization. People are coming on vacation here for a long time, and we deal with a pretty regular basis of supply shortages as well as system accuracy when going through the LCB process, which we have shared, and certainly Representative Olshamer has been an advocate already for us, but it's going to take time to fix that one, would be my estimation. As we look ahead, we are a medium-sized business as we have grown beyond, and I think there's a unique dynamic to that. The SBA and a lot of those things target the small businesses, and we get bundled into that 1,000 to 10,000 employee bundle group. We're a family-owned business, and that makes it unique at times how to fit. We experienced that during the COVID experience with the PPP and those type of items, which initially we did not fit into until they made an alteration until your description of size, and we did not fit into the second version of it. So we get caught in that dynamic a little bit. We have to deal with the bureaucracy of the large companies while we're really still an individually smaller company within that travel organization, because it takes a lot of people to operate in the hospitality business. And just to wrap up, one of the things that really is more on the federal side but ties into a unique challenge that we have, and I think it happens throughout the hospitality industry, but for us in Pike County, because we have H-2Bs, they go by the federal prevailing wage. Pike County is allotted into the New York metro area when it comes to prevailing wage. So if our property was 6 miles different location, our prevailing wage would be dramatically different. In Wayne County, it would be different. But we're in Pike. So when we go out, and we had, I believe, close to 50 H-2B workers, every department that they work in, every employee that does the same job needs to be paid that prevailing wage, including our 15 and 16-year-old workers. The system is very challenging for us from that standpoint, but it's just a reality of what we face, and we do what we need to do to continue to operate. To close, I just want to, again, echo appreciation for everybody being here today. Hopefully you've sensed the passion that we have and what we do. I think Dad alluded to it a little bit about the Golden Rule, but we believe our work is, we are making the world a better place. We have people coming here either with their families or with a couple or individually, coming from whatever's happening in their lives, and we give them that moment to reconnect and realign their lives, whether it's internally or with their families and with their children, and go back in the world and be in a better headspace and be a better person. We talk about it being God's work oftentimes. We believe we are making the world a better place by what we do, and I think the entire tourism industry does that. I don't think it always gets credit for the impact that it makes on people's lives, because it's on the Christmas cards, it's the moments they talk about when they're together, or the times that they are away together and they drop everything else in their lives and they are honest and authentic with one another. That's the difference, and I think that's what tourism offers within our area and the natural surroundings. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Reese.
We're on here. I'd just like to thank everybody that represented us for having us here today. I mean, obviously, we're very passionate. I also come from a hotelier background. I'm second generation at the French Manor Inn and Spa. I can echo the passion that they have, but I'm here really to speak from the Pocono Mountains Vacation Bureau perspective today. So I'm going to address you, and I have a couple notes prepared here. The Pocono Mountains Vacation Bureau, or PMVB, represents the 4 counties of the Pocono Mountains. So we have Wayne, Pike, Carbon, Monroe. It's quite a span. We're a little bit larger than the state of Delaware, so if that puts it a little bit in perspective for you. We welcome tens of millions of visitors annually. Our spend in 2023 alone was close to 30 million, 29.9 million that was spent in our area. The spending from these visitors drives our economy to the tune of more than $5 billion in direct and indirect spending annually. Our industry employs over 25,000 hardworking individuals, generates over $890 million in federal, state, and local tax revenues yearly. We're one of the largest industries in the Pocono Mountains, as we've stated. 40% of the regional labor comes from us and 38% of the total workforce. So those are real numbers that affect our area. And that's why I think a lot of us are so ingrained in our area. John and I are on the school board together. We've been on the PMVB board together. We're on the little local libraries. I'm on the Wayne County Tourism Promotion, where we, kind of look at what the tax dollars are bringing in from those hotel tax dollars. Though it goes to the TPA, the PMVB, each county likes to be represented in those numbers so that we're getting the best for our constituents here. Since the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, the Pocono Mountains has actually been fortunate to see a resurgence in popularity in our area. People were looking to discover the Pocono Mountains, rediscover the Pocono Mountains. The visiting in our area has increased over 35% in just the last 2 years. So the money being brought in, and every dollar spent in our area generates $3 in revenue. So when you're increasing those numbers like that, it demands attention. We attribute these increases to the healthy mix of the world-class accommodations, Kalahari, Woodlock, Mount Airy, Camelback, as well as we have the Reading and Northern Railroad, just to name a few. They're nestled and take advantage of the picturesque landscape, as you've definitely been able to experience while you're here. This is the most beautiful time of the Poconos, is the fall, so we welcome you here. It's tranquil, it's healing, it's what the guest is seeking immediately after the pandemic. Oh, yes. It's what they're seeking post-pandemic and still currently. People are looking to prioritize their leisure time, as you'd said, even in the workforce. But people coming from the megalopolis, from Washington, D.C. up to Connecticut and beyond, we are experiencing that. We have a big influx of people coming in to prioritize their leisure time and their family reconnection time. We are perfectly positioned to utilize this guest one, and the brand product that we've been building over the number of years is visionary. There's generational hospitality leadership supplemented by new blood that understand the intrinsic value of the Poconos and the underlying brand strength. We're fortunate in this industry to have the solid support in respective county governments. The work for us lies in continuing to encouraging the municipalities and the HOAs to recognize the importance of short-term rentals. We all come from a hotel background, but the short-term rentals are providing over 45% of the lodging, especially during the pandemic. So when the guest stays within the destination, they become more brand loyal, they become spenders. So that's helping with that 35% increase in the overall spend. We're also encouraged by the recent visits of the Shapiro administration officials, as well as the governor himself. We're very appreciative of that. We've noted that these visits and that tourism is viable of the form of economic development and the encouraging of the supporting of the industry as well. No administration since the Ridge administration has really been as supportive of the tourism and the Pocono Mountains as the Shapiro administration. We're trying to be extremely vocal about this because we know that the $79 billion industry in the state could use some adjustments, and that's why we're here, just to tell you where we are, what we think the spending could be on, and just to give you our support for the state. We can't thrive and we can't survive without our industry being concerned about the quality of life of the 25,000 team members and also the communities which everybody lies in. We've undertaken programming that supports the nonprofits, the grant funding for life-changing community projects. In the last 2 years alone, we've dispersed over $1 million in some of those projects, over 100 projects that have supported local communities, local parks, and artisan sort of features for our area, because that's what people are coming for. We also are very concerned with the litter in the Pocono Mountains, so we've taken up the Pick Up the Poconos campaign over the last couple years. We've picked up over 40,000 bags of litter since 2017, and I can't even tell you how many tires and odd things. But it's not only unsightly, it's also damaging to the environment. So we're constantly looking for support from PennDOT or from the state to ramp up those efforts whenever we can. From a marketing standpoint, the PMVB has invested millions in promoting not only the uniqueness of the Poconos overall, but our distinctive downtowns. We have Jim Thorpe, Stroudsburg, Milford, Honesdale, Hawley, just to name a few. These are attractions. So I mean, we have hotels, we have attractions, but these little small towns are attractions in and of themselves. Not only do we need to be concerned about them for our visitor, but also just for the livelihood of our stakeholders that live here, our employees that live here. So we're constantly trying to reinvigorate them and put as much spending back into those towns as possible. The Great American Getaway, the new brand rollout from the PA, we are extremely supportive of that. We completely support it top from bottom. The DCED Tourism Office has been really working hard with the state, with the counties, with the DMAOs, with the destination marketing areas. So the brand new look, as well as the attitude towards the tourism promoting, is refreshing. The addition of Ann Ryan as the Deputy Secretary of Tourism has been fabulous. She's energetic, she's highly skilled, she's seasoned by a career of advertising, which we need, because, I mean, we really need to have somebody with that marketing and advertising background. From a strategy perspective, the industry has not seen such talent and energy in the office for at least 2 administrations. We're grateful for the new work that's being done and for the success of the whole state. We also want to note that we're excited about the funding streams that were recently dedicated to the increased tourism promotion for the new 24-25 state budget. The industry has been advocating for decades to increase this advertising spending at the state level. The state brand hasn't been thoroughly marketed in decades, so to have that kind of money, we'll be able to really vet that out there, get the state brand and the marketing campaign on track. That only helps all of the areas of the state. So we know that the new Deputy Secretary is planning significant upgrades to the state website, as well as the digital marketing efforts, and we completely support all of those efforts. Some of our challenges include the ability to recruit and retain talented individuals. That's why we have to support these towns and the community so that we can support and attract the talent. Our careers offer life-sustaining wages and unlimited opportunity for growth. Even at our 19-room, we have a boutique hotel, spa, restaurant. We offer health benefits, 401k. I mean, we have to offer these things to attract quality employees for Four Diamond properties in the Pocono Mountains. And it shows. I mean, when you can have that kind of staff, you can produce the kind of experience that Woodloch is providing here, which makes them top 6, #1 resort. I mean, you can't provide that without having the right talent here at the property. The programming to simplify oppressive regulation and zoning to accomplish the recruitment of affordable housing development is key to not only retaining our current industry, but we also need to diversify our local economies. The lack of qualified labor has prohibited us from doing this for decades. So the infrastructure is so important here. We need to have the municipalities really talk with the state so that we can alleviate some of these pressures and the extensive hoops and hurdles that they have to jump through to get some of these affordable housing projects underway. Finally, we also need to be cognizant of travel infrastructure to ensure that the roadways are passable as well as clean and green from a curbside perspective. I know I mentioned the trash before. I'm kind of passionate about it, but the industry welcomes tens of millions of visitors a year, and a clean roadway sets a positive stage for the guest. The PMVB spends tens of thousands of dollars yearly picking up litter from the roadways of the Pocono Mountains. These could be marketing dollars, but really they are, because we need that curbside appeal. That is the first part of marketing. And as I said before, it's also an environmental detriment. So those are a couple of the key concerns that we see here, and that we hope that you can be helpful with us. And again, anything that we can help in the Pocono Mountains, we are happy to do. And thank you again for having us here today.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner?
Thank you. I just want to say it's a privilege to be here today, but even a further privilege to sit with really 2 families that are the best of the best, the Logan and Kiesendahl families. So it's my privilege to sit here with you. A little bit of levity maybe before we begin, but I commend John's impeccable timing for turning it over to the next generation. A person in Brad that I knew as my duck pin bowling partner, and also the person who could set the most unbelievable, devastating pick for me to get a shot off on the basketball court. I knew he had it in him, but the timing was unbelievable, and I got to know Brad at a much different level as COVID started right after him taking over here at Woodloch. But his leadership and his entire family's leadership through that and beyond is really just exceptional. I come from a tourism background, and I'm a first-generation tourism business owner, but I'm a third-generation Pike Countyan, and I don't think that there's many people that can say that. And both of my grandparents on both sides were born in Pike County, and I always knew that I wanted to come back here and raise a family and live in Pike County. In order to do that, you have to be an entrepreneur, because there just isn't a lot of interesting jobs. So I was able to create my own businesses. I'm really proud of the fact that the one business that I created was Ski Big Bear, a place that was closed down because it's such a difficult business, to now, in this year and every year in the foreseeable future, will welcome in about between 85,000 and 100,000 skiers. We are the part that makes us Four Seasons. We recognize that, we accept that responsibility, and it's something that is a passion. I will tell anybody who will ask, the greatest season of the four is winter. And I think I'm a minority, just like I'm a minority in being a third generation Pike County person. Pike County is so unique. It's the fastest growing county in the state of Pennsylvania once again. When I grew up here, there was between 12 and 18,000 people that lived here. Now I know the census says that there was 60, but there's far beyond 60, and that number doubles and triples during the peak times, both in the summer and we hope a little bit in the winter that it comes in. We need to work on these shoulder seasons. The other business that I've been able to develop up here, another tourism business, is Costas Family Fun Park. I think that came about in a hot tub up in Vermont with a conversation with a bank board member named John Kiesendahl. But I did that so that we could create year-round jobs, so that we could sustain our people at the ski resort on a year-round basis by offering them something in both the summer and the winter. And I'll touch on something that Brad said that I feel so strongly about. Our industry's ability to introduce young workers into a workforce and give them a culture of responsibility and a culture of a work ethic is probably the biggest privilege that we have in the tourism industry. I hire many first-time workers in that young bracket, and as it involves the state, I will say the child labor laws and the disconnect between the federal government and the state government and the rules that apply are really challenging as a business owner. And our record keeping and when we get a visit from one of them, it's somewhat of a scary visit because we have to make sure everything is in place. And then the following month, I'll get the same visit from the federal government with different parameters. The state of Pennsylvania has child labor laws that were developed during the time when our ancestors were coal miners. It doesn't fit. It needs to be updated. It needs to be brought to this century at least. While I was developing these businesses, I was very involved. I'm involved in the Hotel Tax Board as a member of the local hospital board and everything in between, coaching our youth and being involved in the community just like these other families are involved. Someone tapped on my shoulder and said, "Would you be interested in being a county commissioner?" I said, "Absolutely not," because I just couldn't see the sense in it. When I went home that night, I thought, maybe I can make a difference. Maybe it's my time to step up and get involved in even a deeper level. So that was in 2018. My timing is nowhere near what John Kiesendahl's is. I got involved in 2018 prior to us knowing what we were going to go through the next couple of years. I was elected in 2019 and then one more time that I'm serving in right now, the first year of a 4-year term. I'm known as the tourism commissioner. And they know if they call, and it's from my background in the tourism business, if they call or they email, they will get an immediate response. And we will be responsive as much as we possibly can and dig in and do whatever we can to help our tourism industry and really anybody who calls the county. But if it's tourism related, it's my responsibility. I gladly accept that name as a tourism commissioner. I think what I learned quickly, not only are we the fastest growing county in the state, I believe that we are the only one without one box checked, and that's medical services. We're the only county without either an urgent care or a hospital. I'm going to change that, and we're going to change that, and we'll be opening up 2 urgent cares in the next year, and we hope a hospital in the next 3 years. I'm going to need your help to do that. When someone comes to these beautiful resorts and something happens, they are shocked to find that there is not the medical services that you really needed. And I'm specifically talking about Pike County. Wayne County has a really good organization and a small hospital. Pike County has nothing. So we go out of state, out of county for all of the medical services. We need to change that, and I will change that. I sat at a meeting not that long ago where someone said it's going to be your legacy, is going to be about medical services. And the only response that I had was, I hope so, because that is our total number one goal as in county government, is to provide that, check that box. We have beautiful resorts, we have beautiful lakes and streams, we have wonderful people that live here. We have the best schools, I think, that exists because of tourism and because of the development around, just as this development has. A lot of development, a lot of tax dollars, and very few students. So it's a very, very well-established school district, and very well, and I mean all of the districts around here are exceptional. The next thing that is really important to us is infrastructure. You've heard it over and over and over and over again. Worker housing is a better name for low-income housing or affordable housing. We call it worker housing because we need a place for our workers in the tourism industry to live that's affordable. We don't have that. How do you develop affordable housing? You do it in density. You do it in places where you can build a lot of places on a small footprint. We cannot do that because we do not have infrastructure. So again, we need the help of the state and DEP and PennDOT and everybody to help us move that along. It is something that we have money sitting out there from the federal government and from the state government, but getting it going is like jumping through the hoops that you cannot imagine. And a lot of it comes back to the exceptional water quality of our streams and lakes and rivers. That's what people come here for. It's the exact thing that makes it very difficult to develop central sewer. So you're going to hear from us over and over again on infrastructure. And infrastructure for us, in my opinion, in our county, is sewer. We have plenty of water. We actually have really good infrastructure when it comes to broadband. We do. The percentage of people connected to broadband in Pike County is really exceptional. We have power. We have some places central gas, and other places other sources. The thing that we do not have is central sewer. And only a real small portion of Pike County, which is right on the border of Wayne not on Wayne, of New Jersey and New York. And that's why we're the fastest growing, because there's central sewer in that portion, and they're building in as fast as they possibly can, and they're oversold. They can build as many as they want, and they will be sold before they get finished. So we need help in that area. The other challenge that I didn't hear today is the proximity that Pike County sits in this very corner of this tri-state area, which means we compete with New Jersey and New York with wages and everything else that they do. To say that New York is a little bit ahead of us with wages and how they pay people, I think everybody knows that. When you can travel across the border and make more money, we need help in fixing that. We need assistance in getting our levels of what we pay to a level that can be competitive. So I am the tourism commissioner, and I'm proud to be the tourism commissioner, and we want to move things forward, and I think they're the obstacles that are in our way of moving forward. Thank you.
All right, we're going to open up for questions now. Representative Olsemer.
So again, thank you all for your testimony. It was awesome. So in hearing what you had to say, one of the major issues appears to be affordable housing, and really, Ron, I think you said it, Commissioner Schmosley, you said worker housing. So currently right now at Woodloch, do you have any kind of worker housing of any kind?
We have one dormitory-style building, which works for our J1 students who are used to that environment. Beyond that, we have purchased, I think it's about 15 to 16 individual homes that, again, age from anywhere from 70 years old to, probably 25 being the youngest, that we've had to go in, invest, kind of fit to make it work. So that's been the only model that we have been able to do, which is buy houses in the surrounding area, which is obviously not efficient and is pretty costly.
We do have a sewage treatment plant that we built. We turned it over to Aqua a number of years ago, but it's at capacity. It takes forever to get anyone to move anything. So when we worked with the county for a while, and we have the land, and we'd be happy to do what it takes to get this housing in, but we need the sewage, and it's a real issue for us. but we've invested in sewage treatment plants. We had one at Woodlock Pines. We put a much larger one over at Woodlock Springs. In fact, I'm the licensed engineer operator of it. I don't know how that happened, but I got that past that test. Yeah. But now we can't expand it. It's not our plant. Aqua is having a problem going through the state to expand it. That's a real issue, this septic system.
So you have the land, you just don't have the capacity in order to do that, correct?
To create the density, as Ron was alluding to, or really that's where you can make the impact, is having multiple apartment buildings. Again, we want to make sure we maintain the integrity when you drive through. You don't want to feel like you're driving through suburbia when you come through here, but doing it the right way. Density is required.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking around the room here, and we come from an area where big sports rivals, in particular football rivals. Now, Brad, this is cool that you and I, our universes are colliding here today, because back in the day, it used to collide on the football field. He was a running back, I was a linebacker, and sometimes it was his line of the scrimmage, sometimes it was mine, probably more often my line of the scrimmage. But anyway, buddy, thanks, and great testimony. So you guys have a very vast enterprise here, and I'm curious, talk to me about the impacts of inflation. How have you seen that, and how do you navigate inflation with your world and your business?
It's uniquely challenging for our resort structure because we are an all-inclusive resort. So food is involved in the cost, as well as all the labor and those pieces. So it was very significantly challenging for us to try to keep up, especially over the last several years. Food is up something like 22% over the last 5 years when you look at those things. When you're adding food in, you can't increase rates at that level. At the same time, the cost of, the free market ran pricing to try to get staff into a whole different spectrum that we had never put in perspective. So, we've gotten creative with the rate increases that we could afford to do that didn't set expectations of a guest beyond what we could provide. We're not the Four Seasons. We're not a Ritz-Carlton. We are a unique property that offers great value, but the expectations can get askew when the price gets too high. So we were sensitive to the pricing. And then it was finding the right people who bought into it, and ultimately creative accounting on the other side of where can you trim the fat that we may have grown over the years. So it's still a challenge today because you still couldn't catch up to where things have gone. Again, going back to the prevailing wage, not directly inflation, but impacting us. So a 30% increase this year alone for a wait staff person to work for prevailing wage for us in the resort property.
And
You can't account for that,
That touches a lot of our younger people, too. They're coming in at 15, 16 years old, and they're making $23 an hour to start in the dining room. Plus, they get a little extra tip. So, it's just amazing, the change to us. And you can't really pass that along to your customers. We do the best we can with it. So you look for efficiencies and try and figure out how to do it. I mean, we're going to do it. But it's not easy, and it's going to affect the profitability for sure, which will affect what we can put back into the business and how we can grow the business temporarily, hopefully.
So the reality is you're absorbing it, and that's money that you don't have to reinvest in capital
Yeah,
expenditures.
you have to make things. And then obviously in some of our other types of business where development and construction, there was a period there where, you're putting contingencies on everything you're building that were, difficult to swallow because you had no idea what, your 2x4s were going to cost when you actually got it. You're trying to get contracts, and so that was a very tricky. That's leveled off a bit, but it's still, each facet of the business had its unique approach.
Thanks for having us, guys. Appreciate you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimonies. And to the family, I can tell you, coming in from the time I checked in last night to every person I met here, every employee is upbeat and positive, and certainly a reflection on the family. When we first met with the family this morning, every one of you, I mean, the energy is through the roof. It's crazy, and it's certainly a reflection of what the family has done in the generations before you and now that follows you, John. Talk about the employees and using the high school kids, and then I guess you get them in the summertime when they become college students. And I'm just curious, as you go into a third generation, are you seeing second generation employees where, mother or father worked here and spent their summers here and can share those?
We have employees that have been with us for 40 and 50 years, the majority of our staff. Since we are a good employer, we take good care of our people, and we provide things. We have a lot of people who come to Woodlock as kids they may go out afterwards, and many of them come back. And their parents, in lots of cases, are working, and they bring their kids in at an early age. So we have generational staff. We have people 50-plus years, 40% of our staff has been here more than 20 years.
And it's got to speak
unbelievable.
volumes about
Yeah.
working
environment.
for the family, too.
And it's unique in the tourism industry, but we treat people like their family. Our whole goal has been to treat everybody, our guests and everybody like their family, and it works, and we care deeply. And it really develops a culture that comes back to us because they treat our guests the way they're treated. That works well. So we're very blessed with that.
We have a lot of generational employment for sure, and for us, seeking the people to work in this environment, the best people to do so are the people who work there already and referring somebody in.
That's right.
It builds that culture, it reinforces it. We don't have to tell you when you're doing something a little bit off. They will self-enforce, and that's the culture you're looking for. So you're not micromanaging everything. We're too expansive. There's too many things that happen. So when that builds through it, and it is. Mom and dad have been there. Now their grandkids are there, and it's a great legacy kickstart for people into their future lives.
Yeah, I was going to check it in last night at 8:30, and very upbeat. It was just surprising. It's, you would have thought two at the desk, but very impressed. We talk about permitting, and not just with construction and infrastructure, but you also handle a lake. And I'm wondering on that side of it, because maintaining the lake and making sure that, not just the water itself, but everything that's around it, and being able to maintain it.
Right. So
Problems you may run into with that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, a good question. We started with 200 feet in the lake. The lake is about 3 miles around. Now we own about a third of the lake shore. We have a lake association, which we've been very, very involved in since day one. We supply a lot of different things to the lake. We try and limit our skiing and our boating hours so that we're not inflicting, because the other homes are privately owned, mostly summer homes. We work with FX Brown, environmental company. We've been doing that for 28 years. Every year we test our lake. Every year we three different times. We share that with our association, and we have everybody involved. We limit fertilization of all what you can put as fertilizer down in your lawns as a lake association. We try and get the growth along the lake to be there. We do all the proactive steps you can do to keep it right. We did have to do an alum treatment to our lake 12 years ago. We paid for that, and anybody who wanted to kick in from the association helped, but we picked up a lion's share of that. That's been terrific. So the algae bloom that we had 1 year, they've gone away. The lake is very healthy, but we watch that daily. The outlet to the lake flows through a wetland area into that small lake you saw over at the spa at the lodge. So it impacts that as well. So it all comes together. And other than the people that work for us, our lake is our most important asset. And all the people who live around the lake have the same feeling. As these homes have been there, and they all want to be sure it's right. So we work together to maintain it, and we spend considerable amount of time and dollars to make sure it stays safe.
And the outflow of that is something that we're dealing with right now. I mean, some things seem counterintuitive. Obviously, when you go through that process of where they are, trying to get a new dock into the system has taken 4 years because there's in theory at the lodge, it's a bog, and the bog has its own set of permit, so trying to just build bathrooms on a location. We now have the Fish and Game Commission involved in trying to build a bathroom by the farm. So those kind of things are happening everybody. So I guess at this point we're almost used to it, so we don't necessarily get as worked up as you do because it's just part of the process. And we want to do things the right way,
But it's certainly an obstacle.
It is a hurdle. Yeah. Yep. And you have to, therefore, when you want to do something, you have to be therefore so far out ahead of it to get something done on time because you have to check all the boxes. Yeah.
And my last question, and if I can, Chairman, I have a friend, relative that spent years in the tourist industry, in the resort industry, and so I sent him a text this morning. I said, "I'm up here at this beautiful resort. Have you heard of it?" And he said, quite honestly, I think they are the #1 alcohol purchaser in the state of Pennsylvania when it comes to resorts. And I said, I find that hard to believe. I'm looking at all this. I can't imagine. And he having it at that time a big resort, he said, no, I think they were. And you had touched on alcohol earlier, and are there problems there or things that need to be changed to make it easier for you to do business? Whether you are or are not really is immaterial, but you had mentioned it earlier when you were talking.
Significant problems with the LCB, just in terms of availability. A lot of our guests, particularly coming in peak times, are looking for top shelf alcohol, which is, and I'm sure in your environment as well, it's just not available. Or you put an order in, they don't tell you it's not available, and then the order comes and it's not there. That is a regular, ongoing piece. They also shut down one of the local distributing areas out of the Scranton area. They believe moved down to the Allentown area. That created quite a few challenges in and of itself. So it's a regular, again, unfortunately, it's at the point where we almost just expect it and accept it and try to work around it, which is not ideal. But as I said, we've shared with Representative Olsemer, who I know has rung some bells and tried to get some attention to it. But it has not been rectified to a successful amount, and I'm sure Genevieve, you share the same thing.
On a smaller basis, we don't order near the volume that you do, but we constantly, thank you. We do constantly have problems, even with just them limiting champagne. You can get 1 bottle of this, 2 bottles of that. And like you said, we don't quite often know that something's not in stock until we receive the order and it's not there. Well, now none of us live close to any of these distributors or the liquor stores to pick them up. So now you're sending John back to pick up some Buffalo Trace that wasn't on the order. So, but it does, there's gotta be, I don't know if there could just be better communication or better availability through the state.
Should be a better inventory system, especially if they know there's that type of a demand that the products are available, because we're hurting the companies that are providing the
affecting
products
us,
too, quite
correct.
honestly.
Then the big places, at Kalahari, I know they constantly have a problem, so that it is a problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. So, how long have you been ordering alcohol from the state?
Liquor license in 1959.
1959, and would you say there's a pattern in your orders?
There's always a challenge. You know, it goes up and down a little bit, but right now it's particularly bad. The inventory says it's in stock. You order it, it doesn't show up. And we're not the largest liquor
Resort, we are.
Maybe
Because we, yeah.
even count some of them. Well, anyway, we order a lot. So and then that is, it drives us nuts. We're only 9 miles from New York.
I would say it's been
easily go over and
consistent.
get whatever we want.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trouble.
We don't obviously,
Consistently,
but-
though, you have a certain type of alcohol that you purchase certain times for the most part throughout the year, over the years,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, and it's the top shelf, as Genevieve, that's where the struggle comes into, and that throughout the year. It's not like they should be surprised every summer when we are going into our peak season that we're ordering more. That seems very predictable, and it doesn't seem to get better.
Are they delivering to you?
They're not. So we have to drive into town and fill a truck up with all of our alcohol and bring it back for.
So it's our largest resort of purchasing alcohol in Pennsylvania, and you're not getting your alcohol delivered, which I believe the LCB does deliver. So that am I correct there?
We understand that it can happen. We've never experienced ourselves. So.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know that we're the largest, so I don't think that one, but.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions before I'm going to go into a couple of questions. I'm going to start it off with a story, because I wasn't planning on going down this road until you asked the question about the Liquor Control Board. But the very first hearing I had as a representative when I was a freshman, this was 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, it'll be 6 years ago, probably this January, was a hearing with the Liquor Control Board. And I was new to being a representative, so I didn't want to, make waves or anything. So I'm just sitting there listening, and I'm thinking to myself, why do we have this entity in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? Like, what's their function? Why do they even exist? And I didn't want to ask the question to the person, because, surely I would be an idiot for asking a question like that. I mean, I'm sure there's some very honorable and logical reason why they exist. So I just kept my mouth shut and kept going. And here I am 6 years later, and I'm still asking the question, why do they exist? Why can't we just have a system, and we're one of, 2 states, I think. It's us and Utah, I believe, that has a system the way that we have it set up. So that's my 2 cents on that issue. And I just wanted to get the, yes, microphone.
It's confusing for the visitors as well, because they're not used to having such difficulty getting what they'd like. And I
It
hate to
just
butt in,
doesn't.
but
It's a archaic.
yes,
you
if
know,
they're coming
it's
from New York
built.
or New Jersey, they can't understand why we don't have what they
In
want.
fact,
Right, exactly, yes.
yeah, and we have moved forward on the issue as slowly, but apparently it was because we had a governor back in the whenever it was when prohibition was retracted, that was a teetotaler, and so he put a system in place that would make it more difficult to have alcohol distributed, and we've been paying the consequences ever since. So yeah, but Mr. Keeson, though, I just want to note something from your testimony. It's something I tell my kids all the time, that, whatever job you're doing, make it the most important job in the world, and invest in it, have passion for it. And the way you described the tourism industry was, there's clearly a passion for it. And I've never even thought of it in that light, but the value that it adds to the Commonwealth, and the pride that you take in it, and all of you take in it, is something to note in and of itself. So I commend you for putting that type of energy and effort into something that does matter, and it matters a lot to the whole Commonwealth and obviously to this region as well. A couple of things that have been mentioned today, and it seems like the main issue that's been talked is workforce. And there's different avenues of the workforce, of wages, workforce as far as just getting people here, of being competitive and keeping them, housing, and so on and so forth. Something that's been brought up in the national political discussion that I would like to kind of discuss with you, and we're talking about it at the state level as well, though we don't get as much publicity on it. It's still being talked about. This concept of not taxing tips, and then also not taxing overtime. I'm curious, how many of your employees, and this is for everybody, how many of your employees are hourly wage earners and get tips as well?
I don't know how Woodlock runs it. I know you do more of an hourly, but we do an hourly plus tips. And nowadays, most people don't pay with cash. Everybody pays by credit card. So once they've left it on the credit card, it does go through payroll. They do get taxed on it. So it is something that I know the employees are concerned about, but we don't really have a workaround with that. If it's being accounted for, it has to go through payroll, and they do get taxed heavily on it.
Okay.
Similar model for us. We actually have a smaller percentage of people than you'd think that are tipped employees, because at the core resort and stuff, they're just an flat hourly rate that we've kind of come up with that feels appropriate, and the marketplace has told us is appropriate. But for all the others that do have a tip component, it is run through payroll and therefore subject to the payroll tax.
Right. The reason we don't have so many of our employees tipped is that they can have consistent pay throughout the year. It used to be the slow season was, oh boy, we're not making anything. And it's worked out well for our staff, but we still have a number there.
It also allows their pay time off to be paid at the higher hourly rate, which is a benefit to them
PTO
versus
is
the
better.
tip. So it has its pros. and
Are
cons
those
for them.
employees as well? Are they hourly?
Hourly? Yes, hourly.
Hourly
Yep.
employees. And you had made mention that it's harder to get people to work, on weekends, at nights. And do you think if their overtime wasn't getting taxed, that would be an incentive that they would, or is it just money's not the issue here? Is it just something else?
I think some would be, but again, I think as we said earlier, the value, the balance of life is changed a little bit on the continuum of what people feel like. It's more important to be either home with the kids or home doing my recreational stuff than it is to have a little bit higher bank account. What we've seen is a societal shift, a little bit more of that. But there's certainly people who will be motivated by overtime not being taxed, for sure.
I agree with that. The tips or the overtime,
Yep.
not being taxed would
Would
be a
be a
motivator
motivator.
for people.
We also both come from backgrounds with rooms, and as far as the restaurants in the area go, I think that would definitely be a proponent. I mean, there is a lot of overtime, and most restaurants that don't have rooms attached to it are hourly plus tips. So that is a definite consideration.
Yeah, and I was thinking about what you said, Commissioner, about competing with New York, right? I have a hard time seeing a world in which New York would find a way to cut taxes on tips or on overtime. And so here we have a built-in incentive that's not costing stakeholders anymore, And I think over the long haul could potentially bring in more revenue for the Commonwealth, because you're going to have more people wanting to work, and we should be incentivizing work. We need people working. Every corner of the state that we've talked to, and every industry has told us we need people. We need people working. We need, and there's a shortage of people, regardless of how much I try and help that situation. We need people to be working in different fields, whether it's we've heard about in farming and manufacturing, we've heard about welders, and we've heard about in tourism and so on and so forth. So this could be an opportunity for us to take advantage of, something that, without people having to pay more into the system, and at the same time our wage earners get to keep more of their own resources.
I do think it would be a competitive advantage. And I think the other side of this issue is not so much at Woodloch in a large resort, but in a small restaurant, the amount of tips that do not get reported. Because if you stick it in your pocket, you don't pay taxes on it. And I don't want to say that it's rampant, but it's rampant. Yeah.
All right. Well, any other questions from? Thank you all very, very much for being here. Representative Alsmer, if you could finish this off, and we'll go from there.
So again, I'd like to individually, Commissioner Schmosley, I'd like to thank you for your testimony and participating today. Genevieve Reese, thank you very much for coming out and participating in your testimony. And both Brad and John Kiesendahl, thank you very much of Woodloch for coming out and your testimony as well. I think what we heard today, the issues that we heard today, we can take back to Harrisburg and work on most definitely. I also know and would be remiss not to say that in my home district, I realize that tourism is a driving factor for, what brings people to the district and what brings revenue to the district as well. So I sincerely appreciate all the efforts that you do to help the 139th be as successful as it is. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again and turn it over back to the chairman.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you for having us here in your beautiful district. One of the blessings of having this job as the policy chair is I get to go around the entire Commonwealth. I think this is our 73rd hearing over the course of a 72nd hearing over the course of the last year and a half. And every corner of this Commonwealth brings something different and something unique. And we're very fortunate to have an area like this. The natural beauty, the investment here, the passion for this industry. It's been a pleasure for us to get to see it here over the last 24 hours. I'm looking forward to working with you all and making sure that we keep this asset and make it even better if we can help in that regard as well. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for what you do for your local community and for the Commonwealth. Our next policy committee hearing takes place on Monday. That'll be the 73rd. Monday, September 23rd, it'll be in Harrisburg. We'll be discussing the drug crisis impacting Pennsylvanians. Until then, this committee is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.